Okay, welcome all everyone. As always, pleasure to see you. Great to see you back. First time, welcome as a first time. So this is a lecture series on the birds of Orange County. I've said it before, I don't want to malign anyone, but there are just parts of our country and parts of the world where just it's not as diverse. Oh, just the diversity of birds we have here. It's just wonderful. To truly lucky to live in such a great area, and it's such a great time of year to be out. We did two hikes this past weekend. Saw some great birds. Unfortunately, some of the best birds were like right in between when one hike ended and the other hike began, like a bald eagle flying over and sharp-shinned hawk flying. I'm like, oh, everyone just left like 7 minutes ago. Where did you hike? Oh, where do we hike? That's a great question. So I'm a member of a number of organizations, but if you're looking whether for things that I do or just other organizations, there are so many of them. They have so many web pages. For example, the Orange County Audubon Society. If you were to go to their website, you could look at presentations and then the upcoming field trips. So we just had two here, but oh, hold on. Yeah, okay. Sunday, no. Oh, really? We did it this weekend? Wow. Okay, hold on. All right, anyway, so here's what I thought this was next weekend. But anyway, so I'm leading it, so I should probably look into it. But anyway, so we have an upcoming one, I think, this coming Sunday at Bear Mountain. We'll visit the Bear Mountain Zoo. Next, the first Tuesday of the month, we like to go to the Heritage Trail near Goshen. The second Sunday of the month, we like to go to the Bashakill. And those are, just hikes I lead for Audubon. The Bashakill Area Association, a wonderful organization. They have so many events there and at the Mamakating Environmental Education Center. We were at the grasslands on Sunday, so not only did we host a hike there, but there's a Friends of the Shawangunk Grasslands group. So if you like getting outside, if you like looking at wildlife and at birds, there are so many great wildlife organizations. There's the Mearns Bird Club, there's Audubon societies in Sullivan, County. There's a friends group for the National Wallkill Refuge. So, we live in such a wonderful area and such wonderful people are out hiking. So if you're in the mood, by all means. If you're in the mood, just in case I run out of time towards the end, the Orange County Audubon 2026 calendar just hot off of the presses, and the Bashakill one is coming. So if you, for your wall, would like a calendar that just highlights all wildlife, photographed in this area, feel free to take it. Just what we ask is if you're a member, any donation which seems reasonable to you, take a calendar. They cost $8 to make if that is any guide. If you're not a member, then we have a membership form. And if you fill out a membership form, then take a calendar free. So if you'd like a calendar, makes great holiday gifts with those coming up. So you have that to think of. So welcome. Have a seat anywhere you like. Yeah, all the stuff on the tables, that's just we have a lab exam tomorrow. All right, so birds. There's just so much to say. And so the purpose of this series was to give our local wildlife justice, to really, take our time and not to cram, a couple hundred species into an hour. And so over the course of the semester, we're looking at, raptors this week and waterfowl this week. And we are currently winding up that part of our series with a three-part section on songbirds. Half of all birds alive today are these little things. All right, they have perching feet and they have modifications of the place at the base of their trachea called the syrinx that helps them make sound. So this is actually one of the last groups of birds to evolve. So hawks come long before songbirds. Ducks come long before songbirds. Herons come long before songbirds. Songbirds were late in the game. No dinosaur ever saw a songbird like a sparrow, a blue jay, a cardinal. No dinosaur ever came close. So it was about the middle, close to the middle of the age of mammals that they first appear. But they're certainly successful. Half of all bird species alive are songbirds. So many that we have to split them into three groups. So let's do that now. All right, so just as we just kind of meander through this, every now and then there'll be an interesting comment here. So if you're like fans of older movies, where like you know, Cardinal Richelieu is like signing the letter with his stamp with a seal, or if you're a fan of the Rolling Stones song where someone's making sealing wax. The term sealing wax comes important because if you're going to seal something like a letter, very often like bright reds, bright yellows were used. And so someone looked at that and said, these birds, they remind me of that. I mean, beautiful birds, beautiful buffy color, black mask, crest on the top of their head, but they're named for just like bright red tips and bright yellow tips on the tips of their feathers. So they're called cedar waxwings, named after that sealing wax and the bright colors there. So always a joy to see these birds. We may see them all winter, and one of the reasons is they're really good at eating fruits. All right, lots of birds eat fruits. Very few birds can survive solely on fruits. Now, when I say they can survive solely on fruits, they'll eat bugs when they're there. I don't mean to say that they like shun eating insects, but they can survive only on fruits, as can orioles. Now, there are some advantages of that. So if I'll just pause here because this is on campus. If a brown-headed cowbird lays its eggs in the nest of like an oriole or a cedar waxwing, the cowbird says, "Oh, this is great. I'll like these parents, I've invaded their nest. They'll feed me for free and I'll parasitize the nest." But cowbirds, like most birds, they need insect proteins. And so orioles or cedar waxwings, they just feed on fruit and the cowbirds die. All right, so there's an advantage to doing that. There are disadvantages to eating only fruit. So they can stay in winter. So these are actually juniper trees here on campus. And so we actually have a patch of cedars and junipers, and they've got waxy coverings. Most birds can't eat like waxy fruit, like poison ivy fruits. Most birds can't do that. These juniper berries, most birds can't, but a few birds can. Yellow-rumped warblers. That's why we were out at the grasslands on Sunday. And in between our hikes, I'm sorry, Nancy, I don't think you were there yet on the second round, but we saw a yellow-rumped warbler, and you're thinking, isn't this late for warblers? Not for the ones that can eat waxy fruits. They can hang out, eat poison ivy, berries. We could still be seeing them. We saw one Sunday. And this is on campus. You can see these all throughout winter if you want. There is a problem, though, all right? Because if you eat fruit, all right, well, I mean, fruit's not always fresh. Sometimes it goes bad. Sometimes in winter, like the sugars are there, and then it freezes, so you concentrate it, and so it builds up alcohol. All right, so birds can get drunk. All right, especially if you're a fruit-eating bird. I mean, what do we do with fruit? We ferment this fruit, we ferment that fruit, to make alcohol. That's happening in nature as fruits get overripe. It happens in winter because the water freezes and then it warms up. The bacteria can digest the sugars, and so these cedar waxwings, every now and then, one might fall out of a tree, one might fly into something and actually can die. So these are little birds. I mean, birds are light, so not a whole lot of alcohol before you start impairing things. So we have advantages and disadvantages to eating fruit. That past one, I'm sure I'll get to this again, looks a little odd. Not as pretty, little scruffy. But then again, at this time of the year, remember we have teenagers. All right. I mean, no offense to anyone. So luckily, I had more of my students, attending last week. Teenagers, they look a little scruffy. Their behavior is a little different from the adults. We have a lot of birds which hatched this year. All right. And so as they molt their feathers, come next year, they'll molt in the feathers which we associate with adult cedar waxwings. They aren't quite there yet. All right. So that was a juvenile hatched this year, whereas here is adults. And they like to hang out in groups. One of the advantages of hanging out in groups is because if like a tree is going to produce fruit, it produces a lot of it. So if you've got a whole lot of eyes looking for fruit, once one sees it, it benefits the whole group. Also, especially like in winter, like if there's a good fruit eating, a good fruit tree, whoever's there defends it. I mean, robins, they'll defend their sources of fruit, and jays will as well. But then these cedar waxwings show up, and they may have 20 to 40 in their group. And so, the robins and the blue jays, they have to go away. So another advantage to being in groups. So these are wonderful um, birds to see. Like I said, a lot of this video is just taken on campus. So here I'm just talking about the different, waxy fruits here. All right, and just with their crests and their masks, great birds. Okay. The ones that were flying, they were hunting flying insects, because once again, while they do eat fruit, they can eat insects as well. These pictures are of cedar waxwings in the northern US and Canada. I'd just like to point that out because if we see a whole bunch of cedar waxwings in our area, they can stay here all year round. But we're also getting Canada's cedar waxwings, which are migrating to our area in the south. So this area is valuable for the cedar waxwings which breed here, which spend the winter here, but also a lot, pass through here and feed along their way of their migrations. So that's important as well. Okay, we jump to another group of songbirds, and we're just kind of going through the various groups, one at a time. There are a number of songbirds called vireos. Vireos, easy to hear, not as easy to see. They like the tops of trees. All right, so, little birds in the tops of trees, harder to see, especially once the leaves come out. I know when I go out birding, some of you know this, a lot of birders will do something like psh, 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 and that'll like attract birds, but some birds more than others. Like you'll see a bunch of birds respond. Vireos notoriously don't. All right, so hard to see them. Red-eyed vireos have a white eye stripe, and as you might guess, red eyes. Although that doesn't develop until the second year of their life. So you can see red-eyed vireos with brown eyes. Once again, they're a little bit younger. Like the cedar waxwings, red pigments are coming from the food they eat. So birds don't make red. Birds eat red and then choose to put it in their feathers. Right. So that's what the cardinals, etc., will do. And one of the there is an invasive honeysuckle in this area, which makes reddish fruits. So that's not supposed to be here, all right? But cedar waxwings eat fruits, so they eat a lot of it. But cedar waxwings are supposed to have yellow. Anymore, every now and then you'll see one that looks orange. And one of it is they're eating too much of the red fruits or more than usual, and it's actually changing the color of their pigments. So the same thing here with these red-eyed vireo eyes. Like that's a neat name that they're red-eyed vireos, but the light has to be just right. It is a harder feature to see. So, a bird at the top of the tree that you need bright light. It's not easy to see the red eye. So don't feel bad if you don't. Right. But beautiful songsters making songs all throughout spring. And, we do have a lot of them in our area. Okay. And so, even in autumn here, I have some videos of, this is in Goshen. Right here we have some of the ones eating the fruits. Fruits here. Here you see one in brighter light. So that's nice. So that's red-eyed vireos. If you go up north, lots of them in Maine and Canada that call it the reflection of the light, obviously. So as we see red-eyed vireos in this area, once again, Orange County, very important, not just for our birds, but for northern birds as well, which are coming south. In spring, beautiful songs that you'll hear of another bird that tries to make it impossible for you to see it, called the warbling vireo. Once again, also liking the tops of trees. So I'm sure that you've heard them. If you haven't seen them, you would probably be above, in the majority. They're kind of olive colored, kind of like the leaves. It would be easy to miss this bird, but they are quite vocal in spring. So I'm sure that you've heard them. Here you can see it eating an insect. All right, so living at the tops of the trees, has advantages as they glean the branches for insects and the like. Okay. And those are the main two vireos in our area, the warbling and the red-eyed. There's more. This is a blue-headed vireo. I saw a number of these this autumn as they migrated through from the Wallkill to the 6.5 station sanctuary in Goshen. So kind of a slate gray bluish head. One of the interesting things here is when we get to caring for the young, how do birds do it? Well, lots of different ways. All right. So, you go from the swans and the geese where males and females mate for life and they both take turns caring for the young and doing all of the things mostly together, to ducks where once the eggs are close to hatching, the male ducks leave and we'll probably never see the females again. They'll mate with someone else the following year. So bird, mating, goes, runs the gamut. Um, they're usually among the songbirds, males and females are both contributing, just because it's hard. I mean, it's hard to raise a baby bird so that it gets to adult size by the time it fledges. I mean, like with bald eagles, that's what a lot of people don't appreciate. It's going to have a 6 to 7 foot wingspan. It just hatched like the end of March, the beginning of April, but by mid-June, it's adult size. All right. So like they get to adult size by the time they fledge. And that takes a lot of food. So these songbirds, same thing. If they're going to be adult size in a couple of weeks, you can't do that with just one parent. So it's typical that both parents are helping out to varying degrees. Blue-headed vireos more than most. All right, especially this one and thing I'll end with. And they, so people decided, let's study why that is. And they found two things. One, testosterone, which is a hormone which is in both males and females, whether this be birds or mammals and humans. But very often there can be different levels. All right, so males and females or different ages, you might have more testosterone in some individuals than others. Same with birds. So a lot of what's making the mallard make the green head is testosterone increasing around a mating season. Blue-headed vireos lower testosterone than one typically sees in birds, especially the males, but also higher levels of prolactin. Now, prolactins, I struggle with this hormone because I think of it for what mammals do. Mammals, this is the hormone that stimulates mammary tissue to make milk. But fish make prolactin and birds make prolactin. In fact, when a dove produces, quote, crop milk for its young, all right, that's coming from its esophagus in the crop, has nothing to do with mammalian milk. But nevertheless, the hormone prolactin stimulates doves to do that, just as the hormone prolactin is stimulating mammals to be there. So that's odd, that, organisms is so widely diverse said, let's use the exact same hormone to stimulate, food for the young. Um, but prolactin is very high in male blue-headed vireos. Once again, unusual. And one of the most unusual things is that in caring for the young, there's a whole bunch of things. One of the things is the development of a brood patch. And what that is if you want your eggs to hatch fast, you want to keep them warm. All right, so you can sit on your eggs. That's good. But what most female birds will do is either they will just lose their feathers, because that's what happens, or they literally pluck their feathers out and very often line the nest with them. So they have bare skin. And this bare skin is called the brood patch. And then they can just kind of nestle on their eggs, and it's their warm skin that's directly touching the eggs to help warm them up. Male blue-headed vireos develop brood patches, all right, which is highly unusual in birds. So not only are they interesting birds, but then from a physiological point, you might ask, oh, why are these birds acting a little different from others? And you might say, oh, okay, well, we'll measure hormone levels and look for the biological uh, reasons. So while it is possible that they stay with us over summer and nest here, we see them during migration. So if you're going to see one the spring and the autumn, that's the time. And so just a reminder, there's no bad season to look for birds. And in fact, even like, summer might be warmer, spring is when they're making their calls. Autumn migration, you're seeing Canada's birds go through. And so this is a more, so each season has its advantage. This is a solitary vireo, another species, right? So they are a little difficult to distinguish by sight, but their songs, they're very, consonant songs. Red-eyed vireos can sing all day long. Um, and so, especially in spring, that's how a lot of people will distinguish between. Uh, with climate change, we're starting to see some birds frequent our area that don't usually frequent. So this one is unlikely to be seen here, but not impossible, and it's becoming more likely. This is called a white-eyed vireo. Here's a youngster, all right, that doesn't have the white eye yet, all right? But here you can see Just like there are red-eyed vireos, there are white-eyed vireos. Okay, so as we just run through all of the different groups of birds, of songbirds, vireos are a group which treasure our area. Then there are the wrens. Now, the wrens, they belong into a bird family called Troglodytidae, and their genus name is Troglodytes. And if you know anything about this, that means cave dweller. All right, so if you know of like legends in Norse, this like troglodytes and troglodytes, typically just like living in caves, etc. They have that name because most, but not all of them, they nest in cavities. Right? So if you put out like bluebird boxes and et cetera, you can get tree swallows there, you can get wrens there. Now, wrens are little birds, but they can be mean because nest cavities are hard to come by. All right. And so like, that offers protection from predation. Like if your eggs are hidden in, a dead tree, a hole or whatever, predators are less likely to find them. And so these wrens, they will go after like, oh, I put this bluebird box up for the bluebirds or the tree swallows use it. Wrens go after that and they'll actually like with their bills poke holes in the eggs of other birds or kick the baby birds out. I mean, wrens are serious. I mean, they're little birds, but they'll give it their all to make sure that they can be cavity nesters. This they all look kind of brownish. They're small. A way that you can tell all of them is they have this habit of having their tail stick upright. So if you see that, not as many birds do that, like the ruddy duck does among the ducks, but you see a tail kind of sticking up like that, you can be, aha, I think it's a wren. The white stripe there, that it was a youngster. This is a good way to identify the Carolina wren. Carolina wrens make beautiful songs. Every now and then someone will say, what's the Jupiter bird? Or what's the, oh, I'm sorry. I say Jupiter, but other people say it's like, it has this cadence, Jupiter. But some people say other things. I forget, like everyone's saying the same thing, but you have your word to describe the cadence and I have mine. Carolina wrens are very commonly heard. They don't do well in winter, all right? So they often die. So Carolina wrens weren't all that common in our area in winter. But once again, the winters are just getting warmer and warmer and warmer. So they are more and more frequently staying with us throughout the winter, unlike what they used to do. All right, so not only a beautiful songster in spring, all right, but once again, we see them in winter when we didn't used to. All right, so hang out in bird feeders or like in brush areas, we can see Carolina wrens. All right, so nice eye stripe and the tail. If this one turns around, we'll see that. But there's more wrens. So house wrens are a little drabber. So of the wrens, they're the least colorful, a little more of a brownish gray. All right, but also making very long songs, very complex, and so I'm sure you've heard them. Okay, this is the time of year where we see winter wrens, and I saw my first winter wren of the year about 3 weeks ago near Warwick. Little small birds. Once again, you see the feather, the tails sticking up here. All right, so here we see winter wrens. They're so small. Notice how they can just kind of straddle vegetation here. And this next bird, I am so impressed with. You may not be. I don't care. Marsh wrens. All right. So if you see this bird, all right, another wren. All right, nice white stripe here, a little darker, more of a chocolate brown than others. Maybe you're not as impressed. Don't care. You should be because they are impossible to see. If anyone has gone looking for marsh wrens, you can hear them. All right, but they're in the marsh and they stay in the marsh. They're almost impossible to see. So unless you're like super lucky, like try to get your camera focusing on the bird and not all of the reeds in front of it or behind it. So these are far more commonly heard than seen. And just these, and next week we talk about the swamp sparrows. I think I actually have a video coming up called Marsh Wrens and Swamp Sparrows. Just a lesson, like you go to a different habitat. If you're in a swamp, there's marsh wrens and swamp sparrows you'll see. You're not going to see them anywhere else though. All right. So like if you're trying to like add to the birds you see, you just have to go to that habitat. In the same way, there are warblers that will be in marshy habitats, like yellowthroats that you wouldn't see elsewhere. All right. So hard bird to see, but that's among the wrens. And I think I make that point about swamp sparrows and marsh wrens. Next, kinglets. Okay. Um, so beautiful bird. It's a golden crowned kinglet, right? Winter's the time to see them. Once again, with this one and the ruby crown, can you see it throughout the year? You can, all right? But they tend to like to nest in tall evergreens. I mean, like, so if you ask the bird, hey, where do you want to go to make a nest? Tall evergreen. And these are small birds. So as you can imagine, a small bird on the top of an evergreen, you're not really going to see it. But come winter, they will hang out lower and typically in bushes, and they stay in our area. Golden crown kinglets, you can see how they get their name. Just a beautiful golden crown on the tops of their heads. They're too small to really be good at migrating south. I mean, just as you start making your body super small, there just start to be sacrifices that you start to make, like in how fast you lose heat. So they choose not to migrate. They'll stay in our area. So that's why all of these pictures are so bad, because they're in branches. So they're going to be just you picture just this really brushy area. They're in the middle of them. So if you want to focus your binoculars as they keep jumping, that's hard. But B, you want to focus the camera. Half the time your camera's focusing on the branch right in front of them, on the branch right behind them. So winter, at least you don't have leaves on the branches, so that helps. We'll go to the next golden crown kinglet. So they'll stay with us all winter, but once again, they're not good at it. And that surprises me, at least. Like mourning doves, we see them all winter. They're not good at winter. A lot will die. A lot will lose toes over winter. Golden crown kinglets be here all winter. Not good at it. I mean, small birds lose heat like crazy. Like if the thicker you are, the easier it is to maintain heat. A lot of them die. So them and the ruby crown that I'm going to talk about in a second. How do they do it? How do they survive winter? Well, they do a couple things. They hang out in groups. They like to hang out in brushy areas that block the wind. And also, come springtime, they lay more eggs than any other songbird. Like I think the ruby crowned kinglet, little tiny birds, lay up to 12 eggs in a nest, and then can do 2 broods a year. All right. So you could have 24 kids this year. Why? Because they're not going to survive winter well. So that's kind of their way of trying to outpace the winter. So that's looking a little orangey just because I was playing with the contrast so that you could see the colors. They do have a cousin called the ruby crown kinglet. Okay. I don't know why that. Okay. Okay, so here I'm just saying the same things I said about here. But so this is a great time. So I see more golden crown kinglets in winter than at any time of the year. Just on campus, we had some golden crown kinglets hanging out in the trees. So these are great birds. With them and their cousins, smaller than sparrows. Like you need cues. There's so many kinds of birds. So just how do you start distinguishing between them? Not that many birds are smaller than sparrows. I mean, hummingbirds obviously are, chickadees are. Not that many gnatcatchers, but kinglets. And so like when you see a bird that you don't know, think of the birds that you do know and use it like as a reference. Like, is it bigger than a cardinal? Is it smaller than a cardinal or a robin? Is it bigger or smaller? Is it smaller than a sparrow? Because then now you've got a really small set of birds that you are thinking of. All right. So before we get to blackbirds, I want to make a video with these guys. Where did I have? Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to. I think we're getting a little bit of background noise. So the newsletter that I make for Audubon, I've been seeing ruby-crowned kinglet. So this is an article this month. So hot off the presses, it's going to go out any day now for at the end of this month. Here's a ruby-crowned kinglet. Looks a little bit different than the golden crown. The fact that it looks like it has an eye ring, but if you look really close, it's not a complete ring. It's like 2 semicircles. That would be something like if you really wanted to identify. With a lot of the things you'd say, wouldn't it be nice if it showed that beautiful ruby crown that the males raise during breeding season? The males have it that females don't, and the males don't have to show it. So if you're getting, males outside of breeding season, or even inside, they can hide it. And if you're seeing females, then you'd say like, oh, I'll see the ruby crown on a ruby crown kinglet. Not necessarily. But once again, a smaller bird. And winter, once again, is the time for us to see them. All right. So we got kinglets. Jumping around, we got blackbirds. All right. So blackbirds are a family, Icteridae. We'll start off with this group, the red-winged blackbirds that we know so well. The males, not the females, have a big scarlet patch on their wings with yellow underneath. But you see it when they're breeding. All right. If they're not breeding, because obviously that makes it easier for a predator to find them. Right, they're doing that to intimidate other males so they can defend a territory and they can attract females. But if it's August, all right, well, they're not mating anymore. So why would they puff out and make themselves easy to see? So they'll still have those, but you'll see much of the color is covered by other feathers. They don't have to hold it that way so that they're as obvious, but obviously beautiful when it's out. One of the habits they have, like the kingbirds I talked about last week, is here's a red-shouldered hawk that just grabbed a snail in a wetland in Goshen. But look at what the red-winged blackbirds are doing. They're coming out of the woodwork to attack it. It's what's called mobbing. So a lot of birds display this mobbing behavior where if something big flies over, especially a bird of prey, they'll just go after it. So kingbirds go after bald eagles or great blue herons. Here's one at one point going after an osprey. So blackbirds did not invent this behavior, right? But here is a red-shouldered hawk. You can tell because it has the red shoulders and it has multiple stripes on its tail. And then you can see a bunch um, of red-winged blackbirds going after it. I think coming up, if not, I'll find it. I've got a video I filmed like 3 weeks ago of starlings going after a red-shouldered hawk near Florida, New York. Why? Well, because if you're a marsh bird, you don't have trees and branches. You're like making your nest on reeds. Oh, that you can barely see. Remember the marsh wren? You can't see that when you're looking this way. But if you're overhead, it's obvious. There's a little nest there with like little bright eggs in there. So they want to avoid at any cost birds flying overhead because then you see all their kids, their eggs, etc. So if there's a hawk in the area, then they all just start sprouting and they all go after it. They'll mob it to try to chase it out of the area, and that's a way of protecting all of their young. Okay. Uh, Other blackbirds, which we have the orioles, right? Um, so there was a while where we were going back and forth with orioles. Was the Baltimore Oriole, was that the original name? Do we then rename it? Or was that name already taken? Then it goes back. So if you followed the drama for like there was a brief period where you didn't call them Baltimore Orioles anymore, and now you're back to you can. So whatever. Um, a lot of the birds, we know what the males look like much better than the females. So these males, once again, they're orange for a reason, defending a territory, trying to attract a female. Females will typically, be the ones sitting on the nest. So they're going to be more of a drab greenish color. So that pops up, same thing, red-winged blackbirds. The male's easy to recognize. The females look like sparrows, just big sparrows. All right, that's their coloration here. So it's hard to tell the difference between females and immatures males. So the female orioles look like this, but males which hatch this year will look very similar. So notice much more drab than the bright orange. So males will then develop their brighter coloration in their second year. Once again, this comes from the food they eat. So they eat berries that have orange and red and yellow pigments. So that when they make feathers, they can make feathers which are yellow and red and orange. And one of the things that this helps to do is it helps to show females, look how healthy I am. I wouldn't be orange if I wasn't eating great orange berries. So females, they get choices. They're like, I could mate with that male, that male, and that male. That one's the healthiest. I can see it's the brightest orange. So this is not only a way of attracting attention, it gives the females kind of a way to evaluate the male so they can choose the healthiest, um, partners to father their offspring. So Baltimore Orioles, beautiful birds. We tend to notice them most in spring, right, when they're migrating through and then when they're calling. Okay. But, we can see them throughout the year. This video makes a comment about teenagers once again, that teenage birds, I'm in the robins already? Okay. Here, I've got video of, and I'm sorry, it was a windy day. You see two adult uh, Baltimore Orioles feeding a juvenile up at the tops of the trees. So teenage birds, they're independent. They fledged, all right, but maybe they're not totally able to live on their own. So maybe they, might still be getting, some food from their young. So that's a teenage Baltimore Oriole. But also they look a little different from the adults. They don't quite have the bright colors yet. But two adult birds were feeding it throughout this time period. Okay. All right. So just a little bit more about Baltimore Orioles. We get other Orioles too here as well. There's an orchard Oriole. All right, they're a little harder to see, but we do get them migrate through. This is an immature orchard Oriole. The matures, they look like Baltimore Orioles, but instead of being like a bright orange, it's kind of like a burnt red, like a reddish brown um, coloration. Here you can see, going after insects at the top. Right. But if you have your Merlin app, in spring, you'll hear a lot of Baltimore Orioles, but every now and then you might see like, oh, an orchard Oriole. So once again, this is from the Audubon Sanctuary in Goshen earlier this spring. Right, so we have beautiful birds that go through. We have more blackbirds, lots of blackbirds. So we have grackles. So grackles, they're brown, they got black. But when the sunlight catches them, you can get some iridescent colors as well. There's only one species of grackle here. I was in the Everglades during spring break. So here's our grackle by the Delaware River. And notice, if the sunlight catches them right, you got some iridescent colors there, bright yellow iris. So a lot to like about our common grackle. But there are other grackles as well. So there's a great-tailed grackle. There's a boat-tailed grackle. You can see how fat its tail is. So if you were ever to travel, you might see birds similar to the ones that but just relative. So there's a number of related species. So just ooh, and this is the one we don't like. So if we had to play the Darth Vader theme at any point in the evening, it would be now. This is the brown-headed cowbird, also a blackbird. Okay, and as you can see, like the grackle, we got some blacks and some browns going on. They weren't really natives of this area because they like open areas. So they were western birds in the prairie, etc. But then here on the East Coast, we cut down all our trees. And so then some birds which were now accustomed to more open spaces said, oh, we don't have eastern forest where every other tree is this wide anymore. We have all of these open places. So some birds migrated in. So this has been recent. I'm saying recent for a second, for a reason. So, a couple hundred years since we've really deforested this area and we've got all of these cowbirds. One of the things we don't like about cowbirds is that they're nest parasites. They will lay their eggs in the nest of other birds so that when they hatch, the grackles are often bigger than the little warbler, nestlings which should be there. I'm sorry, did I say grackle? I meant cowbird. The cowbird nestlings can then kick the other birds out. All right, so like out of the nest so that they die. And so you might have the adults now without any offspring of their own, just feeding the nest parasite, make it more likely that that happens in the future. So that's bad, and it especially happens near open spaces, which is why, let's say you have an area of continuous forest over here, that warblers, the scarlet tanagers, and everybody else that are in the deep woods, they're safe because the cowbirds like open. Well, let's say, oh, you're saying, oh, well, it's a lot of forest. Let's just put a road this way and a road this way, and everyone will, have a lawn. Well, now all of a sudden you've got open areas, and so now cowbirds can use those open areas to now reach nests in the wooded areas that they otherwise wouldn't have. So anytime we interrupt continuous forests, one of the things that we're doing is we are increasing the likelihood that cowbirds can parasitize. Just Just a word on cowbirds. Why haven't birds figured out how to deal with cowbirds? Well, once again, it's only been the past couple hundred years. Evolution works, but it doesn't work on the drop of a dime. And so cowbirds are very recently that they've been able to invade here. So a lot of birds haven't been able to adapt yet. The fruit-eating birds have an advantage because the cowbird nestlings die in their nest. But some birds do figure it out. Like one of the ways you figure it out, if you ever notice why like robin eggs are blue or this one has spots, if everyone makes different eggs, it's easier to spot the eggs of a nest parasite because the nest parasite is just going to lay its eggs in birds' nests at random very often. And so you might say, hey, my eggs have spots and this one doesn't. Um, what yellow warblers do is if they see their eggs and there's a cowbird egg in the midst, they'll make another nest on top of the nest they already made, crushing their eggs, but then the cowbird nest as well. And they have found like yellow warbler nests that have like 5 tiers to them, all right, just because it kept happening. There's a neat blackbird, which we have called the bobolink, loves open spaces, which is why in our area, like we're not a big grassland area, but we do have, stretches of grassland. So you can see bobolinks here. And I apologize. I'm angry with myself right now. There is a place down closer to Warwick. There was like a big debate. And I apologize that I can't name the place where we took a hike this year. Um, but in any case, these are from here. And there was the debate, there was these big fields, and it is the custom to mow the fields. But there was, some thought like, hey, mow your fields, but could you not do it until this date? All right, because these blackbirds, they nest in the ground. And then if you mow it, then you'll just, get rid of them. And the town did. They forewent mowing the lawn. And so we went there in the spring. There were bobolinks everywhere, as you can see. Beautiful hike. Audubon will try to do it again next year. And also just, a little thought where, there's all of these things that you can do to help birds that isn't, not a huge lift, but just, here's an area near my house that I used to mow. I'm going to mow it, 3 weeks from now and give these birds that nest on the ground a little chance to raise their young. So the males have that bright yellow patch on them. It's sometimes nicknamed the reverse tuxedo, all right? Because if you notice, they're black on their bellies and they've got like white on their backs and yellow here, so kind of a reverse tuxedo, I guess. The females, as is often the case, no, kind of like more of a yellowish brown color so that they can camouflage a bit better. Okay. Uh, Here's a red-winged blackbird nest. I sometimes dedicate far too many hours in summer to trying to cut down the Phragmites reeds, which are beyond my control, but it makes me feel better if I at least try. But you have to then be careful because every now and then you realize, oh, here's a red-winged blackbird nest. So you can see why they would want to go after a hawk because like a hawk flying over above, could be able to see this. But these are red-winged blackbird chicks developing in marsh vegetation that I came across. So I figured I'd share those. We have more, but some of these other ones are ones you're less likely to see. So there's a rusty blackbird. They're in decline, all right, and so they're not as common to see as like red wings, but their numbers are going down. You can kind of see more of a chocolate brown head, yellow iris. Also, just I have to remind myself of this to try to look at every bird because it's easy to say, oh, that's a bunch of this kind of bird, but when you look close, birds often travel in mixed flocks. That even if it's mostly chickadees, that doesn't mean there aren't warblers there too. Even if it's mostly red-winged blackbirds, doesn't mean there isn't a rusty blackbird there too. So, just if you're looking for odd birds, I know one of my colleagues was told by a birder that he followed is look at every bird. All right, I mean, like, oh, I know they're all a bunch of mallards. Really? Yeah, take a close look and you might say, no, that's a different one. Here. Starlings look like blackbirds. They're not. They're in another bird family, and they are an invasive species. They were introduced from Europe. Now, how were they introduced? There's probably a couple of things to it. So what I'm going to say is true, might not be the only reason. I'm not saying there was an effort in the 1800s, there was like a literary society that said, wouldn't it be cool if we could introduce into the Americas every bird that is mentioned in a work of Shakespeare? So they did. Starlings are mentioned in some work of Shakespeare. So they were brought here. They might have, ended up here with other groups as well. I'm not saying that was the sole introduction, but that was certainly a part of it. And they've taken off. There are some birds which get along rather well with people, house sparrows, starlings, and so as people then have just expanded into more and more habitats, obviously the birds that get along with people, they're doing better and better. In winter, birds behave differently. They look a little different. So starlings have like brighter, like white flecks in winter than they do in other times of the year. So sometimes in winter, birds look different because they molt at different times of year, and they can act a little differently. So starlings don't do this in summer, where you look up and say, "I'm looking at hundreds, maybe even thousands of starlings." So that's a winter thing. All right. So a number of reasons for this. More eyes help you spot predators. If a predator does go after you, if you're in the midst of like a couple hundred of your friends, really hard for the predator to focus on any one of them. It's easy to just kind of get lost in the shuffle. Like if you're trying to take a picture of one of those birds as they all fly around, like you would have trouble. A raptor does as well. And if you're not the hugest fan of starlings, given that they're non-native, and like I totally get that. But if you see like just these huge, like thousands of birds flocking around and all of a sudden switching, directions, a lot of scientific studies on how is it they do it, who are they following? And which bird decided, let's go left right now, and 3,000 birds followed it. So, certainly a lot of interesting science can go on here. So just, amazing birds. I think I have a couple more. Yeah. So I'm just making a point that bird behavior changes in winter, and I think somewhere I have trail camera video of more of the stories. Okay. So I wanted to talk about blackbirds. Okay. Switch. All right, let's talk about other birds. All right. But this one, if you're angry with me, if you're bothered by what I'm about to say, I hear you. All right, you feel free. Go ahead. Um, do you like scarlet tanagers? Who likes scarlet tanagers? I like to say I do. No, you don't. You don't like scarlet tanagers. Why? Because they're not tanagers. They're cardinals. And if you're looking at me and you're like, why am I saying this? Well, this is I wrestle with this because I teach genetics, so I like the genetics people, but I also teach anatomy, so I like the anatomy people. And sometimes when scientists classify things into groups, you come to moments where the anatomy people did it this way, and the genetics people did it this way. And the genetics people, this is a newer thing, and you can just take more and more DNA sequences from more and more birds or whoever and sequence them. So anymore, when the geneticist and the anatomist fight, the anatomists end up just giving up and the geneticists win. So as the geneticists start, comparing genes from all these birds, they say, all right, well, tanagers, there's a lot of tanagers in the world. Scarlet tanagers aren't in the group. Their genes just don't put them in the group. All right. So if you were to say genetically, who's the most similar to a scarlet tanager, the answer is a cardinal, and it's not a tanager. So I do want to talk about scarlet tanagers. All right. But I think not now. I think I want to just tell you what I mean by tanager first, and then we'll get back to our our group here. So once again, if you read bird literature, I mean, this is what goes on. The geneticists, they, take genes from all of these birds and they come out and all these branches and which branches put together and how do we, split the infraorder into superfamilies? How do we split that into families? So, that's all there. So here are the tanagers. Tanagers are one of the biggest groups of songbirds in the world, and they are centered in Latin America. All right, so if you're in Brazil, if you're in Ecuador, this is where you have most of the tanagers. Now, just so common names are kind of tough. This bird, depending on, so Hawaii has these. I lived in Paraguay for a bit. Paraguay has these. These are often called cardinals, or the little ones without the crest are sometimes called cardinillas or little cardinals. But they're tanagers. So if you're getting angry, you should, because our tanager is really a cardinal. These cardinals are really tanagers. And you may think, oh, I remember Darwin and the Galapagos, Darwin's finches. Guess what? Darwin's finches were tanagers. They weren't finches. Some of them had thick bills, which was unusual for tanagers. So the geneticists are screwing everything up, right? Like you have, these are the names that I like. You know, so here we are in South America. This is Ecuador. And now you're seeing tanagers. This, I think, is the mossy-backed one. You can see how green its back is. And so different groups of birds were born in different parts of the world. All right. So the wood warblers that we have in North America that we love, that's an American thing. All right. Like in Europe, they've got other warblers. They're pretty songsters, but they're not as pretty colorful. So different groups of birds, developed in different parts of the world. And so, there are lots of American birds that are found in North and South America. A lot of birds that, like the tropics of South America, like Ecuador, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, that's where you find most hummingbirds. Most hummingbirds are in the Americas, but especially near the equator in South America. Same thing with the tanagers. So tanagers are just this beautiful, beautiful group of birds. But I kind of like wrote a theme to this lecture series that this is going to be about local birds. So, if I'm going to tell the truth, I have to say, all right, we're going to have to zip through and stop talking about the tanagers of Ecuador and get back to our group. So here's the scarlet tanager, which once again, not really a tanager, we know. Uh, they are beautiful, beautiful birds, but they love the tops of trees. All right. And so in springtime, if the males are trying to make a show of themselves and make calls, you can see them. But otherwise, it can be a little tough because, tops of trees, it's something that you don't have uh, as as good a view of. One thing I struggle with personally on how to teach this and how to be fair, the males are trying to be showy. Well, very often, like they're trying to show off to females, impress the females. They're trying to defend territory, so they're making these loud songs. So it's easy to say, "I love this kind of bird. I love this kind of bird." Only after a while do you realize, wait, I'm only thinking of the males. Like, have I ever seen a female scarlet tanager? Have I ever seen? Because you may have, but they don't look like that. All right. They're trying to hide. All right. They're more of a green, they're almost green. Right. So, they're a local bird. So if you see, something which is, give or take a little smaller than a robin, but it's green, your best bet it's a female scarlet tanager. Immature males, you'll see an immature male coming up in just a second. They have a little more black on them, but they do keep the greenish hue for a while. But to be honest, like, I hate to be all judgy. All right, so here's the immature male. It's got a little more black on it. Just the brilliant scarlet. I mean, just it's breathtaking. So it's nice to focus on that. But obviously, you need the female cardinals as much, if not more, than you need the males. And so we shouldn't just focus on, when we say this is what this bird looks like, that's just what the males look like. The females are just as important. All right. So I made that point again. And so then this is in a broader group of cardinals. Much of this group, really thick bills, and then, bill shape just gives you an idea of what they're eating. All right, because some things are going after insects in which narrow bills are at advantage. The thicker your bill, the better you'll be at crushing seeds, which is why some of these might stay around with us all winter. Because our insect-eating birds, unless you're a woodpecker, you're going to have to go to Virginia to find bugs. All right. But here, there are still seeds around. All right. And so if you've got a thicker bill, these are things that don't have to migrate as far south as if at all. Once again, while the female cardinals do have red on them, they don't have this much red. And this is to impress the female. All right. This is to show the female, look how red I am. I got this red color from the food that I ate. See how well I'm eating. I'm a healthy bird. I would be a good father to your offspring. Here's another bird I love in this group called the rose-breasted grosbeak. And I forget it has a nickname that I've never used, but I read it. Anyone know? It's called like slit-throat bird. Yeah, like it just that sounds morbid, but like just the fact that it has this big red. I like rose-breasted, but if you like the slit-throat bird, or I think its nickname is about that. You're free to use that as well. Just beautiful on the male scarlet breast. Females, once again, don't have that bright coloration, so they can blend in a little bit more. Okay. We get rose-breasted grosbeaks here. So these are all local birds from the Goshen Sanctuary or other near places. But once again, just huge, huge bills, which are really good then um, at crushing seeds. We have more finches, all right? So in the cardinal group are the finches. Goldfinches are easy to identify, brilliant here. And you may say they all migrated because I don't see that anymore. They're still here, they just don't look like that anymore. Because once again, if you can molt twice a year, and if this is in breeding season, why on a snowy day would I want to be bright yellow? All right, because every hunter in the world would know where I am. So goldfinches are here. They're just like a drab yellow, brownish color. In spring, so here's in spring, that's the male and that's the female. Or see, this female is more of a drab color. In winter, males will have that coloration as well. All right, so we do have a lot of goldfinches, especially in fields where there's going to be like grass seeds and the like, looking a bit more like this. So notice, it's late in the year, the leaves haven't come out, but that's more of what a goldfinch would look like. So we got goldfinches. All right, so I got more video on those if you're interested. That's a female, not quite as bright as the males. In the group of the finches are the buntings. All right, so here is a beautiful blue bird called the indigo bunting. You really kind of need bright light bouncing off to see that because birds don't make blue pigments. There's no blue pigment. What it is the way that light bounces off the feathers. All right, so it's the structure of the feathers. If you crush the feathers, then they don't look blue anymore. If you find feathers and you grind them up, you get a brown powder. You don't get a blue powder. So you need light coming off of it in a different way than you need for like a red cardinal or an orange Baltimore Oriole. So if it's a sunny day, the indigo buntings look absolutely stunning. If it's a cloudy gray day, you're not as impressed. All right, you just need light bouncing off in order to get that hue. In this group, we have a few more finches. We have both house finches and purple finches in our area. House finches are easier to see. So notice the thick bills, which let them feed on um, on their seeds. All right, but once again, they can stay throughout winter. Notice like there are still some berries around. Usually these berries aren't all that wonderful because if these berries were great, then they would have been eaten already. Or as birds migrate, they get the best berries. And if the ones that they've left, they're like, not as nutritious. The plant didn't put as much effort into making them, but the plant knows, hey, come February, these birds are going to be desperate. They'll have nothing else to eat. So we have both house finches. I mentioned the indigo bunting. We also have snow buntings, which are only here in winter. Okay, and so once again, there's great reasons to go out birding in every season. There are birds that you will only see in winter, birds that you'll only see during spring and fall migrations. And so, if you say like, oh, I'm not seeing as many birds as I did come uh, in the summer, nevertheless, you can see some different ones. Here's another bird called a pine siskin, and I think I'm just about here. And so here's where I want us like stop here and I'll just kind of sum up why. Because in one sense, just because birders have such a warm spot in their heart for a group of birds called the warblers, it would make sense. Why don't we just end with the warblers? Because birders love them anyway and make that the third week of songbirds. So yes. However, if we're splitting it up number of birds wise, you don't want to like rush through one week and then not like have quite enough to talk about the next week. So you'd like to kind of divide it equally in three. So the question is, where do you put the sparrows? So they are related to cardinals and the finches because they've got the thick bills, they like the seeds. So it would make sense to do sparrows now. And this is, juncos are actually sparrows. But as far as time-wise, if we were just trying to split the songbirds into three equal groups, this would be the good place to stop. So that next week would be the last of our bird groups. It would be sparrows and the warblers, which is what I'm going to do. So the goal was to just kind of give an overview. I tried to do, mostly the movies because that's fun. But, we got stills as well. You can see, like I mentioned, the thick bill of the rose-breasted grosbeak. And I know people at home can't hear when I play music here, so I just figured I'd end with this. Also, then just one other thing that we could do is then just listen to all of the songs. Why aren't you? Sorry, behave. Okay. So just each one would make it. Sorry. So each one makes its own sound. So you're like, oh, there's the red-winged blackbird. Here is the bulk. Oh, I'm sorry. Just keep playing. So, if you wanted to really get to know the birds, thank you for all of those. Getting to know their songs is a wonderful way as well. So, I'd like to thank all of you for coming. I could maybe play one or two or more as people are winding down. And one just to remind you that the bird songs are neat. Red-eyed veers are kind of constant. Once again, if anyone is interested in a calendar, either tonight or I'll always have these with me for the remainder of the series. If you're a member, whatever you would like to give and take one with you. If you're not a member, we have a membership form there. Fill it out. You can either mail in or you want or give it to me. I'm Vice President of Orange County Audubon and take a calendar to accompany that. If there's any questions you have, feel free to stay. Every now and then I know a student needs me to sign something or take a picture so you can show your teacher I was here. That's totally fine. Otherwise, have a wonderful week, and if we see you next week, that would be great. Thank you for coming.
Walter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Walter.
Hi everyone. How's everyone doing? Oh, nobody at home
Walter.
told me that you were just looking at my chest the whole time. I'm sorry.
Yes, we were looking at your arms.
Feel free to next time. Feel free to throw that out there.
It's Barbara. Can you hear me?
Public is now for Jamaica tomorrow. The satellite.
Okay. Thanks for coming here.
About 100.
Thank you. Oh, great.
Walter.
Yes. I'm sorry. Is that Barbara? I recognize that.
Yes. You
Hi,
mentioned.
Hi, Barbara. How you doing?
Okay, you mentioned the trip to Bear Mountain. Could you tell me the time and where we meet?
Ooh, yeah, okay, I should do that. Here, give me a second. Let me just stop recording. Right. Yeah, give me, I'll be right with you.